So when you think of the Wendigo, what do you picture? If you picture a large, menacing humanoid creature with a stag skull for a head, then you, my friend, have been blinded by the lights of pop culture. While this version of the Wendigo is truly terrifying, the original Wendigo of Algonquin folklore is genuine nightmare fuel. Let's explore the legend of the terrifying Wendigo and how a man fixed his mistakes and adapted the Wendigo accurately in the critically acclaimed horror video game Until Dawn. I want to paint you guys a beautiful picture. Imagine a large skeletal humanoid creature with decaying skin exposing rotting flesh and bone, large bony fingers with long sharp claws, gnawed-off lips exposing large pointy teeth, expelling blood-curdling shrieks and menacing snarls, zooming through trees and leaving a foul odor in his path. And no, it's not your ex. This is the horrifying and sadistic Wendigo. The legend of the Wendigo starts in the First Nations of the eastern parts of Canada, the Great Salt Lakes, and the Great Plains regions of the United States, from the Algonquin-speaking tribes of the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Innu, and the Cree. It is a malevolent, supernatural being that is associated with long, harsh winters, famine, and starvation. They are visibly large, juxtaposed with a malnourished body, and will grow into proportion of whomever they devour, cursing the Wendigo to live in the paradox of extreme gluttony and perpetual starvation, becoming the embodiment of greed and excess. This archetype has been around for centuries. I'm sure even the cave thems had people in their communities who were selfish and greedy, stealing from each other or hiding stashes of food for themselves, and even becoming violent in the name of greed. And this is why the Wendigo was created in the first place. The tribes of this region experienced exceptionally harsh winters, and the story of the Wendigo was used as a scare tactic to discourage stealing of resources and to learn how to cooperate as well as value the needs of the community. The legend goes as follows. One tragic day, a hunter gets lost during an intense winter. The hunter experienced such severe starvation that he resorted to cannibalism to satisfy his hunger. Once he consumed the human flesh, the Wendigo spirit took over his body, transforming him into a menacing and vicious killing machine, cursed to wander the woods and devour new victims. The Wendigo hunts with astonishing speeds, supernatural strength, and extraordinarily heightened senses. They can survive partial dismemberment, auto-cannibalism, which if you didn't know what that was like I didn't, it basically means eating yourself. Which, if you wanted to dabble into some cannibalism but didn't want to commit murder, maybe this was a good way to do it. Anyways, according to belief, even writing or speaking the Wendigo's name could attract the attention of a Wendigo. So if I go missing, you know why. It must have been very important to people to relay this message if they felt the need to pass it down, knowing even just muttering the word Wendigo could be a death sentence. So, the Wendigo is by far faster than us and stronger than us, so how could someone survive a Wendigo encounter? For one, its primary weakness is its frozen heart. The key to escaping is to destroy the icy heart and release the Wendigo spirit. However, this will inevitably kill the human that the Wendigo spirit inhabited, leaving no room for redemption. But the Wendigo would almost immediately kill you, so maybe you could use some Yarden for some debuff, Quen for defense, and then top it off with some Igni if you're feeling a little spicy. To start its attack, the Wendigo will bait you, intimidate you, and mimic you, calling for help like a sick taunt. Considering Yrden, Quen, and Igni only exist in The Witcher, in modern adaptations, the way to get to the Wendigo's icy heart is by a silver bullet, or you can use a silver sword or a stake, which would be considerably harder to do than a gun. You do have to be accurate because it does have regenerative abilities. However, more historical Algonquin folklore states that fire can kill a Wendigo, making Igni perfect in this case. This would still be extremely difficult to do, and if you're lucky enough to get one down, do not forget to check for the body. And there are some real-life accounts of Wendigo sightings. In 1878, there was a Native American man named Swift-Runner who was reported to butcher and eat his entire family. During a particularly brutal winter, one of Swift-Runner's children tragically passes away, but later on, the rest of the family is found mutilated and devoured. Swift-Runner ends up confessing to this crime, proclaiming that he was possessed by the Wendigo spirit. If the Wendigo legend was true, it would be speculated that Swift-Runner ate his son, turned into a Wendigo, and then devoured his entire family. But in reality, he was probably just hungry. What's a man to do? The next account of Wendigo encounters is of a man named Jack Fiddler. Jack Fiddler was an Ogima, which is a chief and shaman in the early 1900s, and killed over a dozen people with his brother Joseph. Jack, being the chief of his people, was seen as being able to do no harm, which is how he was able to get away with murdering a dozen people that he claimed to have been possessed by the Wendigo spirit. It is stated that some of these victims were of a group of people sent to his tribe by enemy shamans, and that others were of his own people who acquired an insatiable, incurable desire for human flesh, naturally as one does. When it came to his own people, family members of the very ill would ask Fiddler to kill them before turning into Wendigos, and in some cases, the Wendigos themselves would ask to be killed. However, Jack and Joseph were arrested for murder by two members of the Northwest Mounted Police, a Canadian paramilitary police force, in early 1907. Jack escaped imprisonment and ended up hanging himself before his trial could come to a conclusion, and Joseph was sentenced to death but was later pardoned 3 days after his death. Talk about bad luck. The instances of Jack and Joseph trying to rid their tribe of cannibals was the start of a phenomenon called Wendigo psychosis. It's uncertain whether this was considered a mental illness back in the day, but symptoms of Wendigo psychosis include depression, violence, a compulsive desire to consume human flesh, and in some cases, actual cannibalism. As you can tell, the image of the Wendigo we all know and love is fairly different from the historical folklore. In modern pop culture, the Wendigo is a large and ghastly humanoid creature with the skull of a stag. It was famously portrayed in the movie Wendigo in 2001, directed by a man named Larry Fessenden. Larry stated that he merged a story he was told as a kid with the scary stories to tell in the dark version of the Wendigo. Larry actually admits that he didn't do much research on the Wendigo before he made his movie. This version is still seen as the face of the Wendigo in popular culture ever since. Now let's talk about Until Dawn. And warning, this will contain many spoilers. I personally loved playing the game and found it very entertaining and genuinely put me on the edge of my seat. Until Dawn is an interactive horror game developed by Supermassive Games and published by Sony for the PS4. That utilizes a butterfly effect concept where the choices you make determine the fate of the characters and the outcome of the game. It's written by Graham Resnick and our boy, Larry Fessenden. Larry finally did his research and redeems himself in this game. The story is set in Alberta, Canada on the fictional Blackwood Mountain. And fun fact, even though Larry's version of the Wendigo popularized the Staghead version of the Wendigo, the OG version of the Staghead Wendigo actually comes from the novella The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood in 1910. Which is a cool homage to the person who initially created the Staghead version of the Wendigo. So back in the day, Blackwood Mountain was inhabited by the Cree who believed in living in harmony with the mountain by not disturbing its wildlife. Fast forward to the modern day, the mountain is acquired by an American movie mogul named Bob Washington and his wife Melinda. The mountain now has a giant family lodge with a guest cabin, the Blackwood Sanatorium that was established in 1922, all on top of an abandoned system of mines. The game starts with a group of friends, Mike, Emily, Sam, Jessica, Chris, Matt, twins Hannah and Beth, and their brother Josh Washington, who all go up on the siblings' family lodge for a party. Mike, Emily, Jessica, Matt, and Ashley play a cruel prank on Hannah, who had a crush on Mike, who was dating Emily at the time. Sam tries to stick up for Hannah like a true friend, telling everyone that the prank was mean and going too far, which it was. However, Jessica tried to justify it, saying that Hannah deserves it for trying to make moves on Mike, which playing the game, Hannah never made any moves on Mike, as far as we can see. Plus, Hannah is super shy, and as a shy person myself, I couldn't see her making a move on Mike, but I digress. They leave a note for Hannah to find that reads, "Hannah, you look so damn hot in that shirt, but I bet you're even hotter out of it. Come to the guest room at 2 a.m. Mike XXX. Ooh, saucy." Mike ends up convincing her to take off her shirt, and while she does this, she hears some giggling underneath the bed and realizes that they're all under the bed recording her this whole time. Which makes me wonder about the dynamic before the game. Like, I wonder if Hannah has been kind of the butt of the joke before, or not seen as an equal, because this was really mean. While this is happening, her brother Josh is passed out drunk, and Chris is as well. This prank causes Hannah to run into the snow-covered forest, utterly humiliated, with her sister Beth running out after her. This run turns from an act of shame to a race for survival as Beth and Hannah start being chased by something of unknown origin. During the chase, Hannah and Beth trip over a ledge. Beth is holding onto the ledge while simultaneously holding onto Hannah, who is dangling over the edge and holding onto Beth's hand for dear life. A mysterious man ends up coming to try to rescue the girls, where you are given the choice to either drop Hannah or let go of the ledge, but either way this is unsuccessful as they both fall an excruciating amount of feet to the ground. During the fall, Beth breaks her back on a rock, killing her, while Hannah suffers from a broken leg. And another fun fact, while the twins are running, you can quickly see Beth running adjacent to the area where the ledge is, but Hannah is so panicked that she keeps running forward towards the ledge where the inevitable fall happens. And this happens within seconds. Who knows what would have happened if Hannah followed Beth? Would they have been saved? Would they just have gotten attacked by the creature? We can never know. Plus, it wouldn't have been very good of a game. A year later, Josh asks all the friends to come back to the family lodge to honor the memory of his sisters. And this is when all of their lives are changed forever. Again. However, Josh has an ulterior motive for gathering them all to the mountain, and that is revenge. Josh sets up an extremely elaborate and downright evil prank on his friends. He starts his prank by setting up posters and props that insinuate that a madman is loose on the mountain. The alleged psycho ends up creating scenarios that cause the players to have to choose whether or not they kill one or the other, whether or not they kill themselves or the other, chase them around the lodge, and in general just wreak havoc on his friends. But as all of this is unfolding, they don't even realize there is actually a graver danger that is upon them all. Let's go back to the mines in the sanatorium that I mentioned earlier. In 1893, tin and radium were found inside the mountain, and this caused an extensive building of mines within the mountain that was established, owned, and operated by a man named Jefferson Bragg, who ended up being the overseer of the Blackwood Sanatorium years later. The Cree were rightfully very upset by the defamation of the mountain and said that the mining of the mountain caused the spirit of the Wendigo to be released. In 1952, due to poor maintenance of the mines, it ended up collapsing and 30 miners were trapped underneath. 12 ended up making it out, and these men were dubbed the Miracle Men. These 12 survivors are taken to the sanatorium to undergo physical and psychological evaluation. Upon arriving, the miners actually seem fairly healthy for what they've gone through, but they had a great deal of trouble reintegrating into society. Over time, the miners are seen having increasingly worsening irregularities and undergo physical changes, while becoming extremely violent and eventually beginning to attack employees. There's one patient that we can see being clearly documented, and that is Billy Bates, aka patient number 9. Billy Bates was one of the 12 surviving miners. He had a wife named Agnes and a daughter named Louise. Upon finding documents in the now abandoned sanatorium, it is shown that Billy started to overcome some strange physical changes. On day 4, January 9th, 1952, it is documented that Billy started to have epidermal dyspigmentation, severe post-traumatic kyphosis, which is becoming hunched over, corneal dystrophy and clouding, which is abnormal material building up in the cornea, with acuity 2160, which is severe visual impairment. On day 9, January 14th, 1952, he developed chronic kyphosis, scarring alopecia, which is when the destruction of hair follicles is replaced with scar tissue, extreme nasal septum perforation, which is having a hole in the cartilage of your nose, and ectodermal dysplasia, which is the pointing of the teeth. On day 12, January 17th, 1952, it changed from alopecia to telogen effluvium, which is losing hair through high stress, like turning into a Wendigo. Maxillary canine 1 inch, so his canines grew to 1 inch. Corneal edema, which is corneal swelling, but with acuity now at 20/22, so he regained his vision, and also gained epidermal tufting. So yes, my friends, all 12 of the miners trapped down in those dark, damp, dingy mines were so driven by starvation that they resorted to cannibalism and consumed the flesh of all the other miners, thus becoming possessed by the Wendigo spirit. The Cree warned them. In the sanatorium, you come across a dead body inside of a room, and next to the corpse is a suicide note that was written by no other than Jefferson Bragg. The note states, "They are dying outside. I hear them screaming and crying. This hell is my only legacy. God's punishment for my mistakes. No escaping my fate. Death awaits me now." Signed, Jefferson Bragg. Bragg had committed suicide by drinking poison, and you can even tell in the suicide note that he was dying while writing it because his handwriting becomes barely legible towards the end. Pretty fast acting. The guilt and horror of what was happening was so immense that consuming a lethal poison was a more pleasant way to go. This was probably correct because the way Wendigos kill is extremely brutal and sadistic. They will tear out your flesh, gouge your eyes out, sometimes will even prefer to impale their victims on hooks, and they'll eat your insides while you're still alive. Now let's go back to Beth and Hannah. Beth upon the fall died instantly, while Hannah, however, suffered from a broken leg to the point of barely being mobile. Hannah had to drag Beth's lifeless body into the mines for safety. Hannah makes a grave for Beth, and you can come across this grave when exploring the mines, as well as a set of tally marks carved into the cave walls. While down in the mines, you also come across a diary written by Hannah. You come to find that Hannah was trapped in these mines for weeks. Hannah was so ravenous with hunger that she dug up her sister's grave and ate her body to survive even just a little bit longer, which is so devastating and just shows how powerful self-preservation is. Due to her cannibalism, Hannah herself is cursed to become a Wendigo. Another character that has been inhabiting the mountains this whole time goes by the name Jack Fiddler, aka the Stranger, aka the Flamethrower Guy, named after the real-life historical Jack Fiddler that I mentioned earlier who killed 12 supposed Wendigos. This character was named after the IRL Jack Fiddler, but was modeled by Larry Fessenden and voiced by him. Jack has been living on the mountain this whole time, continuing his father's legacy of hunting and killing Wendigos. His grandfather ends up dying trying to capture the fiercest, most savage of the Wendigos, Maku Pitu, an Algonquin word meaning one who has big teeth. The Maku Pitu is discovered to be the very Wendigo that ran after Beth and Hannah, and Jack, who happened to be the mysterious man trying to help Beth and Hannah, ended up killing it with his flamethrower. I honestly couldn't imagine what would be the worst death. Being sadistically and viciously killed by the most savage Wendigo to exist, which would be very painful but for a short amount of time. Falling to death from a ledge and landing on a rock breaking your back, or starving to death for months even after eating your own sister. Let me know in the comments what you think the worst death would be. I say Wendigo because I think it's the coolest one. Not only was Jack hunting and killing Wendigos, but he was also extensively studying them. You can see this when you come across one of Jack's journals, which showcases the accurate characteristics between the Wendigo in the game and Wendigos in Algonquin folklore. In the journals, you find out that bullets won't pierce their skin, but shotguns can keep them at bay. They definitely can't be cut or stabbed. The method of killing Wendigos is by fire, which is shown by Jack carrying his trusty flamethrower. They only hunt at night, and they can't see you if you're standing still due to their prey being highlighted only when moving. However, when they do see you, your body becomes highlighted with a ghastly white, with the surrounding areas being black and reddish brown, so you'll be easily spotted. I do believe this is specifically a mechanic of the game and not truly how Wendigos navigate or hunt their prey in the folklore. Another aspect of Until Dawn's Wendigo that's accurate to folklore is that once you kill a Wendigo, the vessel of the Wendigo spirit dies, but the Wendigo spirit becomes released, awaiting a future victim. The Wendigos in the game are extremely tall and lanky, with skin taut to the bone, large claws, long sharp teeth, gnawed-off lips, cloudy eyes, and decaying skin. They zoom around at astonishing speeds and expel blood-curdling shrieks, and are unnaturally strong, which is also accurate to Algonquin folklore. It can be seen that they still hold onto some aspects of humanity and some knowledge of their past lives when Josh is inside the mines and the Wendigo that has been chasing them doesn't immediately kill him, and he also recognizes that the Wendigo that's been chasing them this whole time was his own sister Hannah, when he notices her butterfly tattoo that you can see on her when she was alive. Hannah also doesn't directly kill Mike, showing that she recognizes him as someone she had feelings for. Until Dawn was a great game to play. They took the time to understand the mechanics of fear in media, jump scares in the right places, great buildup of suspense and fear, some comic relief, characters that you either hated or rooted for, and also an eerie yet beautiful soundtrack. The butterfly effect was enjoyable, and you will never be bored replaying because there are so many different outcomes. It's also a very tragic story. These very close siblings go through a truly horrific situation. The sisters' last moments are filled with intense shame, sadness, pain, and terror. Hannah not only has to drag her twin sister's lifeless body into the mines for safety, but she has to dig up her sister's grave and eat her body in order to survive. I definitely cried during this game. And Josh himself is actually a very tragic character. Although we can't dismiss the amount of psychological pain he caused others and the cruelty he inflicted, he obviously didn't process the death of his sisters well. The amount of guilt he feels is undoubtedly insane because of the fact he was passed out drunk the whole time the prank was happening, and he obviously would have stopped if he had the chance, and his sister might still be alive. Josh, who was played by Rami Malek, was diagnosed with mental illness at 11 years old. After the disappearance of his sisters, Josh undergoes psychosis, which was brought upon by the depression he experienced because of his sisters' deaths, while already having schizophrenia. Symptoms of psychosis include hallucinations, delusions, and agitation. A person undergoing psychosis isn't usually aware of their behavior. And I'm sure this is how Josh was able to justify pulling this extremely elaborate and dangerous prank on the group for revenge. Not only does he have to figure out what happened to his sisters, but at the end he either dies at the hands of Hannah, because she's still a Wendigo after all, and her hunger for flesh is by far overshadowed by her love for her brother. Or he becomes isolated and mentally broken, resorting to cannibalism, turning into a Wendigo himself. So what can the legend of the Wendigo teach us? Selfishness and greed have no place in society, and compassion and sharing of resources are key to humanity's survival. Why are there so many people without homes? Why are there children in this world who don't know where their next meal is coming from and don't have access to clean water? And why are we currently going through a global climate crisis? This is because of the greed and selfishness from our world leaders. The world is literally run by Wendigos, feeding off of us and not being able to withhold their power over us. They need to do better for us. Humans as a whole need to understand that working together is vital for our survival. It can't be us, the people, and them, the world leaders. It needs to be us, creatures on this planet, who protect it and each other, and until that happens, humanity is doomed. No pressure. It's nice to see a game depicting folklore accurately. And shout out to Larry Fessenden for doing research, because the Algonquin folklore should be honored and recognized. Now when you go to a party and someone brings up the stag head Wendigo, you can be like, well, actually, no hate on the stag head Wendigo though, it's still very intriguing and fear-inducing, and I actually love the design of it. But it's nice to give the OG Algonquin Wendigo the spotlight. If you played Until Dawn, prepare for a heart-pounding experience that will keep you at the edge of your seat. And I should go get this situated. Bye!